Welcome to the Organizational Transformation Kung Fu Podcast with your hosts, Sandi Verrecchia and Jennifer Long.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Organizational Transformation Kung Fu, or OT Kung Fu, as we call it. And I'm here with my comrade, Sandi Verrecchia from Satori Consulting in Toronto, Canada. Hello, Sandi. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you, Jen?
I am doing super duper.
Excellent.
Warm. It's warm here in Denver. Is it warm there in Toronto?
It is warm, and it's particularly warm in my office because the air conditioning doesn't come this way and the door's shut.
So Sandi and I are going to be sweating it out
This
podcast.
Totally are.
In our early summer consideration of, we have taken it upon ourselves to read Adam Grant's last book called Hidden Potential. And we are going to talk about what we learned from that book. There it is. Here's my copy. Adam, we both bought one.
We both bought it. Yep. Not for
to read through and think about like what value we got out of the book and what the key messages are and what that might mean to you listeners as you are leading your organizations and your folks, because in coaching, I find a lot of my people come with, what do I need to do to get to the next level? Mm-hmm. How am I going to grow in my career? What do I need to do to excel in and move to less and such? Yeah. And it's a common theme, right, in executive coaching. So thinking about potential and how organizations actually define it and put it into practice in terms of how they see their workforce and how they strategize for their workforce, and how does that all impact what you're actually doing as a business to prepare your people to grow and succeed and thrive. And so that is all what we're going to talk about today. So let me just toss it over to you, Sandi, with what your thoughts are on potential. And we'll start maybe with the basis of our own experience and then think about how Adam talks about it.
Yeah. The question that came up for me when I was reading it is a question that I want to sort of pose back to the people that I'm coaching or the leadership teams that I'm coaching, which is, how will you help your staff reach their potential, as opposed to, what are the staff doing? And I was thinking about the how we structure our performance reviews now. It's not about potential. It's not about capacity building. They're more about, did you do these 8 things that you were supposed to do? And that doesn't sort of create this notion of building potential in people, which will create more capacity for people to do more things.
Right. Performance reviews are lamely about goals, right? Did you do your goals? Did you reach your goals? And some of those goals have meaning, and some of those goals are just random, right? They're not strategically aligned to any kind of business effort. They're not necessarily, maybe they're career pathing, but this is why performance reviews in and of themselves, which is probably its own podcast.
Yeah, well, our work-life bloom was all about that, right?
Right.
A couple of episodes ago.
Yeah. I mean, is people only get a couple times a year to talk about their career and their career development, and what does that mean? And it's an important conversation to have. And so looking at just, how that structure can limit the fact it's called a performance review, right?
Yeah.
And if you're doing
it's not
a good
looking
job,
forward.
Right. Why are you looking back? At this point, you should have had all the conversations. So when you get together for a mid-year, you should be talking about the next 6 months, not the last 6 months, because that's over.
Yes.
So it's like,
and our memories are short, right? And what I always find in those things, unless somebody's really diligent about writing things down daily about somebody else, it's the last thing that you did is what is you're reviewed on, because we're human.
You have all the tools, right? You've got feedback, you've got one-on-ones, you've got all the things where all that feedback should be happening. There should be zero surprises when it comes to performance review, and you should spend very little time talking about any kind of rating or racking, stacking, quantifying whatever the performance is, because that should be very clear. And the conversation should really be about, what did you learn and what are you going to do with it?
Yes.
Where are we going to build capacity and in you going forward? What do we need for you? Who do you want to be? Not where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah,
Because no one
exactly.
knows. No one can
Yeah.
answer that question.
No. Don't know what we're doing next week half the time. But we just finished our last podcast, and Jen interviewed Todd Conklin, and one of his 5 pop principles was learning and improving are vital. And that really talks to that, right? What was the learning in it? And how are you going to improve something in the future? And what do you need? Right?
Yeah.
So you're not going it alone.
Exactly. And I think that's because Adam spends a lot of time in this whole book talking about learning and leveraging learning and what that really, really means. And so I think that's an interesting aspect of it, because I think a lot of people, a lot of organizations are stuck in the idea of high potential is based on what I think of you and my experience with you.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a lot to do with who you are and what your potential and your capacity really is. And I think that's where the value of this book, that's where it's a great thing to have a podcast about after the one with Todd around managing capacity and confidence, because it really does validate why those principles, A, are principles, and B, really, really throwing at organizations how people are put into succession. And that it's a lot more storytelling than it is understanding who these people are and what they're capable of.
Yes, right. Because they're not thinking about it from that sort of stepping back and looking at it from a potential perspective. And one of the things he talks about in the book is this whole notion of perfectionism, and how we look for, we want our people to be perfect, right? And leaders want people. And so we're graded against not being perfect. And he says in his book, I assume it's correct, there's no correlation between a perfectionist and career success, and that we need to be imperfectionists.
Yes, that we are all unique in our capability. And that's and it jibes with, and I don't know, this is a whole other book I'm bringing in, The 9 Lies About Work, where Marcus Buckingham talks about leadership is not a thing, right? Mm-hmm. We can list out all the skills and behaviors of what leaders are. And yet when you look at those against your actual leaders and you think, how many of those does that guy have, right? Where they may have a handful of some of these traits and behaviors, but they also have a whole bunch of other things that it's a unique mix of things and how you apply it within the context. And it's the thing you're leading. It's not leadership fit in the square hole.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I think the other concept that he talked about, and we talked about this when we talked with Dan Potifrak with his Work-Life Bloom book, was this potential. There's peaks and valleys, right? And nobody can be in a peak literally and going on a literal trajectory uphill all the time, right? There are valleys, and we have to give grace for those times when people aren't at their best, because leading people and meeting them where they are is what creates that the culture of trust and the culture of being seen within an organization. But we want people to be here all the time, and it's not.
And it's a false expectation. Yeah. And even though you might look at somebody who is on a promoted thing and they keep going, there's as many books on why leaders fail, right? Mm-hmm. They get the Peter principle, right? When we get promoted beyond our capability.
Yeah.
Because when we think about high potential, we're always thinking about demonstrated competence. And what we understand about high potentials is what makes them high potentials is they're excelling where they are.
Yes.
It's not because they can excel with broader scope in somewhere else. And there's a huge disconnect between understanding high performance within what you know and you're currently good at, vice it, can you take that excellence and apply it differently at a different level? And that's where I think leaders are missing the thought of, you're putting someone in based on what they can do now, thinking that past experience will drive future performance, and they just don't correlate.
No, and so what we need to be looking at is their leadership, their learning agility, I guess, right? How agile they're in to learn and apply that learning, and so they may be fundamentally super good at spreadsheets or whatever it might be, but it's the learning agility for them to expand and to learn and to grow that way. That is a fundamental aspect of somebody who can excel at a higher level. And that's why the Peter
Absolutely.
principle happens, right? Because all of a sudden, if they don't have that agility,
Mhm.
I've learned all I can learn. And so I'm going to be really good, but I'm going to be good here.
Or I can't learn fast enough.
Yes.
Or I don't adapt, right?
Yes.
Is I'm I can function in this environment, but I'm slow to assimilate where I am now, what that means, make sense of that, and adapt how I do things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's all the nature of learning agility. And I'm a big fan that learning agility is a much better predictor of leadership capability than past performance, than how much experience and exposure to the business they've had, than all
Right.
that, with the training, tick the boxes, all those
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so how do we measure learning agility?
Right. Well, they have assessments for it now, which is nice. So you can have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation about it. But those are self-understanding. But when you start to define for yourself as a business what you're looking at, right? And what is this person's capacity for learning,
Mm-hmm.
for adapting, for flexibility, and adapting being, right, how do I move into a new situation, and flexibility being is, can I show up differently when I need to, right? And those are
Mm-hmm.
all aspects of that, because that ability to do that means I'm learning at a much higher level. I'm paying attention, I'm taking that information in, and I'm making sense of it in a way that fits my new context,
Right. Yep.
right? And I'm going to have enough self-reflection to understand that what I'm doing isn't working, so I got to try something else. The willingness to like innovate and experiment and take risk, interpersonal
Mm-hmm.
risk, is another sign of learning agility. Like, will I put my neck out there to
Yep.
try something? And performance risk, right? Will
Mm-hmm.
we actually, will I design a strategy that says, okay, let's try something that hasn't happened here?
Yeah, that's right. And willing to put it out there, right?
Yeah.
Without going back to those hot principles, is like, blame without it. Like, what was the number two? It's
Blame fixes
no
nothing.
error. Yeah, blame is
Oh,
the first one. Error is
error is
normal,
normal.
right? And so
Yeah.
allowing you the grace to have errors or to go down a path that maybe wasn't working. But yeah, organizations have to be willing to allow that to happen.
Right. And
Yeah.
so Adam Grant is very, very busy talking about, right, that it's growth over innate talent, and that the learning, right, the growth mindset and the ability to embrace and learn from failure are critical.
Yeah. Yeah. And the question is, what can I do better tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right. So really that self-reflection, and we talk about it a lot in terms of leadership, it is powerful, right? And then it's not beating yourself up for doing something wrong, but if you turn it to the positive of what did I learn and how can I apply it, and how can I teach that to others, that is
Yeah.
very strong leadership qualities.
Well, it is the learning, right? The time to reflect is where you actually kick the door open to learning. And if you don't create space to reflect, you don't think about your mistakes, you don't think about your choices, you don't think about your capability in any real sense, to give yourself opportunity to go, what is my strategy? What can I try next? Right. And that conversation, and when he talks about building a learning organization, right? Which Sandy and I were laughing earlier about, like, where are those? Do they really exist? Is that a unicorn? Right. Of learning cultures are an interesting environment, because it's a workout to be in
Mhm.
a learning culture. It's a workout. There's an intensity there
Yeah.
that can be energizing and can be draining, because
Mhm.
you're never, when you're on a learning curve, you're in discomfort more than you're in comfort. And not a lot of people like to go to work and feel uncomfortable.
Oh, for sure. That's right. And that's why that Peter principle is important, right? When you think about it, because you get to that you plateau. But and it can be exhausting, right? Because you're always striving for something more and always striving. And yeah, it really depends on maybe on your personality as well. But if you have a leader or a leadership team that is sort of demanding more and better and always looking for something that's better or changed or whatever it might be, it could be difficult unless the context is provided as to this is our culture, right?
Yeah.
And this is
the rituals are there to support it. The
Yes.
systems are there to support it. And it doesn't feel like self-criticism.
Yes.
And that's different, right? It feels like people are open, right? There's a willingness to be open. There's a willingness to be influenced. There's a willingness to pull the things that you feel are personal. I did this effort, and to look at it in a way that's outside yourself.
Yes.
So that you can examine it. And that takes some systems and processes and rituals that have to be real.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And throughout the organization. Yeah.
100%.
One of the other things he talks about is the how we are, as individuals, we are often self-limiting. So the whole imposter syndrome, I shouldn't be there. I'm self-critical about it. And he talks about that you can feel like an imposter when there's a gap between others' expectations of you and your expectations of yourself. And how we should be not listening to our inner critics as much as we should be listening to the feedback we're getting from others, because they are likely less critical than we are individually. And so we should be seeking out that feedback from others.
Correct. And that's a hard thing to quiet the inner voice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that inner voice is based in fear. That inner voice is based in self-protection.
Yeah.
And
it's biased.
100%. And it really wants to put you back in a known pattern. And that's the struggle that you have to have. And so, there's some good work out there on imposter syndrome, but it's interesting because very successful people have gone through imposter syndrome.
Yes. Yes.
It happens a lot.
Popular coaching topic, right?
It's a very popular coaching topic to get people to stop talking to yourself like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And where's the evidence, right? Where's the evidence of all of this criticism? Where is it? Right?
Yeah.
Have you been fired ever? Right.
Exactly.
So those kinds of things. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think there's a book that I love, small little read. You've probably read it. Taming Your Gremlin, I think it's called. Have you read it?
Yeah. No.
It's all about self-reflection on what that negative self-talk is and where it came from, where it germinated from. So when you can name it, you can, as I say, flick it off your shoulder when you hear it, right? And so it's a great little book. I recommend it all the time.
Oh, good. Yeah, because I think our own self-awareness of what we say to ourselves, right? There's a huge piece of communicating better, of dealing with your own tapes and triggers, imposter syndrome, that level of, and you don't get it unless you get self-reflective, because you don't spend the time going in the moment, what was going through my mind. And exactly, you can recall that stuff. It's not like, I don't know. It's like, no, think about what they said this and you thought in your head, what, and you can go there. You can find those sentences, and it's interesting to write down what you say to yourself and then think, God,
that sucks.
Person talking to me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So he talks about supportive systems. I was trying to, kind of qualify this for people who are listening, or like, what are the things leaders, right? What are the things leaders need to take out of this information as they think about how they are responsible for this context of potential? What do they need to be doing with their own teams? What do they need to be doing in terms of what they create organizationally? So I thought, this whole create a learning organization is one of the ideas, but I think that start with your team. So many leaders don't even take the time to create a learning environment within their own AOR.
Yeah. And what does it mean? What does it actually mean, right? Because words are words, but how does it actually, systemically, how does it actually work through an organization? I think it's important. Because we can
right?
say
And
it, but the
right,
structures aren't there.
right, and is mentoring woven in, right? Do you create capacity for mentoring? And we're in this place of remote work, and we're in this place
Mm,
of, I think we're always in this place of doing more with less kind of thinking, right? This
yes.
scarcity kind of.
Mhm.
And when you're in the scarcity, you always feel strapped for time, right? I don't have time to spend doing this. Like learning is some kind of luxury,
Yes. Yes.
right? That execution is where the payoff is. And I think
Hmm.
that's the biggest misunderstanding relative to all of it is by focusing on execution and not on the learning, you will never execute at a higher level
Never.
because you're not creating any capacity. You're not creating any innovation. You're limiting that whole aspect. And so the stand out of it for a minute, and learning does it. It's not like it's so super time consuming. It's 10 minutes at the end of a meeting,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It's the actual meeting of what's the military term, after action review, where you sit down and you with your group after a project do, people call it a hot wash or whatever.
Yeah.
They'll do the thing. Then what do they do with the understandings?
Hmm.
Right? What happens to the learning? What happens to, is it applied? How do you know it's applied? And it's
Yeah.
that level of follow through that can sometimes be missing. So if you're not making the space, that's one thing. Not doing the after action review,
Hmm.
not doing the hot wash, not doing the self reflection at the end of a meeting. It's 5 minutes of, is this working? To, we're doing all that, but then that information just goes on a piece of paper somewhere.
Yeah. And it needs to lead to action. Right. And again,
Yeah.
because it's like all these sort of things that we ask of people, tell us more, tell us more. Every time we ask that some of that information, we need to be doing something with it. So if it's just sitting on a piece of paper because we ticked off a box, that
Mm-hmm.
was it the head say at the end of a meeting, and you do
Mm-hmm.
nothing with it, but it
Mm-hmm.
happens all the time, right? But it's
All the
another
time.
thing that we need to do, and then people go, well, why are we bothering to do it?
Correct. And even if, right, it's think of it just even in a coaching context, is when you have this great, hour long, 90-minute conversation, you sort of have to get to that point at the end of all that. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
What is the thing? What are you taking from this? What is the priority? What matters most? And what are you going to actually spend conscious effort on?
Yep. Yeah. What is your
And
action?
that piece is the critical piece in any of these processes. If you're going to create a learning organization, being that your own AOR, whatever it is, your own team, what's the follow through on the information, right? What is the conscious effort you're going to commit to? And you almost have to ask yourself that question in that capacity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so when we talk about, we can't really measure capacity building, or we can't sort of measure that learning organization, you kind of can, I guess, if you were to put some structure around it, right? Did we say what we're going to, did we do what we say we were going to do? Did we,
Mm-hmm.
what was the learning? And so if you could put some structure around
Yeah.
the
Here's what
learning
we
that came
committed
out.
to. Did we do it? How many
Yeah.
of our commitments have we actually met? Yeah.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah. Yeah, which falls into your book around accountability, right? Because there's clarity at the end. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
what we said we are going to do. This is our learning. We all agree on this, and we can then
Mm-hmm.
hold ourselves accountable to have the next conversation about it.
Right. Because you're creating the expectation. You're creating the expectation we're going to learn and improve from this.
Yes.
And if we're going to meet that expectation, what does that look like?
Mhm.
And are we clear on how that applied thing is going to, right? And is that conscious effort on the part of all of us? Is that conscious effort on the part of three of us? Is that,
Yeah.
what is that?
Is it just a note taker?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I wrote it down. Well, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Let's
Yeah.
read it again and see what it
Yeah.
means now. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's excellent.
it's, and that whole intention and conscious effort is part of the elusiveness, right? That we say, are we measuring or are we monitoring, right? And just even that fact that we're asking ourselves the questions is a way to monitor. And one of the key indicators of things changing is how you talk about it. your conversations are different. Your questions are different, right? That happens over time, and sometimes it's noticeable and sometimes it's not. And so that's why the reflection is interesting to say. I feel like we're talking about this different than we've ever talked about it. Right? And to even entertain that notion of 6 months ago we were saying this.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So learning organizations, I think that's the crux of all this. And one of the things he talks about is this making space for deliberate play, right? And again, that's that learning and trying on new things and being innovative and being able to take some risk along the way. So organization, like leaders really need to rethink, I think many times, they need to rethink how they're showing up and are they creating the space for an agile learning environment that will, as you said, meet your expectations as opposed to trying to put, ticks in a box.
Yeah. And I just wonder, right? I'm just having this thought as we're talking that this speed of change, this digital everything, right? The AI-ness of it all it's created this very instant execution-y doey thing, right? Yeah. We can like it and move on. We can
instant gratification.
30 seconds of something and think we have an understanding of it. And I think that we are really conflating how we're showing up in the world in a way on how we're doing business. And it feels a lot like, based on just the work I've been doing in the last 18 months, is there's so much of this: create space, stand out of something, breathe, right? Like take a minute, that we've stopped reflecting and we've stopped doing the complex and critical thinking that it takes to really be effective and efficient. That somehow we must move at this rate. And I think that's a false choice. That it's not a thing. And we don't need to, we really need to re-examine how we're showing up in that.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So he talks about a couple of character skills. I wrote 2 down. I'm sure there's another one that I missed, but talk about being a sponge, right? Which is that whole learning and that we talked about. Being an imperfectionist was the other one. Is like creating space for that to happen. I'm not sure.
Right? Because we're all imperfectionists. I think maybe we just have to embrace the suck. Is that we're not good. We're not, and no one's perfect. Perfect is an idea. It's not a thing. It's just not a thing. And if you're striving for that, you will never be satisfied with who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Your level of confidence will suffer.
Yeah. Yeah. And then giving people permission to try, which is that whole growth mindset. So overall, Jen, what did you think of the book?
I think he's an excellent writer, and I always enjoy it. And his graphics are always really funny. He's very tongue-in-cheek, and so I always enjoy those. So if you haven't really entertained this idea of potential and thinking about it differently, and if you haven't, but it's a lot of kind of some of the themes that we know. So I want to say, you could read if you love Adam Grant, and it'll add value to where you are in thinking about redefining potential and high potential in your organization. It might be helpful to back up some of your thinking and your strategy. But the idea is essentially growth mindset, learning environment, scaffolding, right? He talks about creating things for people to grab onto, to learn, to grow, to like, what are your mentoring, coaching offerings? That it's nothing terribly new.
No. He does have a quiz or an assessment of sorts. If you go to adamgrant.net, I haven't done it myself, but I do like a good assessment. So that might be something. And it's a way to, his book was a good read. Absolutely. And a nice way to get leaders to start thinking a little bit deeper about some of the principles in here and how are they applying them and how could they apply them. And so every time you read a good business book, it gives you something else to think about, something else to bring back to your office, something else to try. And so I would recommend it for a nice, easy, plain read for sure.
Yeah, it's timely. Because workforce is as Todd likes to say, your workforce is your solution, not your problem.
Yes.
So figure that one out, invest in it. All right, that's it for us. And we'd love your comments. And if you've read it and have additional thoughts and you'd like to add to that, we'd love your comments. And thanks for downloading, listening, subscribing, or all the things that you're doing. And that's us today. Peace out.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
See you, Sandi.
Thank you so much for listening. You can check out Sandi's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI consultinginc.ca. And visit Jen's website at own-up.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.